Yes, it is a turtle race.
That looks like the turtle game at the CNE back home.
Yeah, what do you think, Weeksy? That's your first time seeing that transition.
Totally does. That's awesome. I love it. Very creative.
Kudos to the edit department.
Totally. Props to the edit department and reader. Accurate, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, seriously.
Listen, EG's been joking all week. Seattle, be careful. You take a couple wrong steps, there's going to be another turtle in the transition.
Right.
It was the who doesn't want it race.
Yeah, that's fair.
We take a look at the wild card standings. You see the Kraken and the Jets currently holding them down. They were all in action, all four of these teams, last night.
That is funny.
The Jets and the Preds were able to win.
Yeah.
Calgary Flames were not. And because of that, they are now 6 points back of the Jets for that final wild card spot. And so I ask you guys this simple question. Are the Flames, in your mind, done? And if so, how do we get here with the Flames?
Well, we got here in a lot of different ways with the Flames. And do I think that they're done? I never write teams off, but I think they're done, yes. To answer you. And I'll tell you why. Right from the outset of the year, Jacob Markstrom wasn't on his top 5 goalie form.
Right.
And, of course, they had to go to Dan Vladar, who's played well and who played well last year. But I look at the numbers. Like last year, you could talk about the offense. They finished with 12 combined shutouts last year.
You're right.
12.
You're right.
This year, I don't even know if it's one at this point still, which is crazy for as good a goalie as Markstrom is and as good a goalie as he became during his time in Vancouver and since being there in Calgary. The other thing I would say, Reader, and I remember this, and I'm going to say it because I have family in Alberta and in Calgary specifically. I said last year what was going to happen with this Matthew Tkachuk, and everybody looked at me like I had 78 heads on my body. The fact that they lost Matthew Tkachuk changes everything for me as far as this team is concerned. Everything.
And that was his decision, too. It's not as though the team didn't want to sign him. I mean, that's a personal decision, and it's like, all right.
But motivated by what, I think, is a fair question.
Yeah, well, I guess we'd have to ask Matthew that.
100%.
Maybe motivated by the fact that you can live in 90-degree weather for half the year.
Lost
Either way, it doesn't really matter because he's not on the team.
Yeah.
And the players who are on the team, the Nazem Kadris, that hasn't stepped up. Jonathan Huberdeau hasn't stepped up to the same position that was expected. The goaltending isn't there, so you're not getting the goaltending to start with. You're not getting Oliver Shillington missing, which from the start of the year has been huge. He really brought an element to this team last year of speed from the back end, puck moving from the back end. He developed into what everybody expected was going to be a top-flight defender with great offensive skill. Those factors right there, and then when you're the two players who you lose with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, the two players who come in, numbers aren't even close to matching where they were last year. Yeah. Well, you put it all together, they're going to battle for where they're at. And now, when things don't go well, now they're questioning, the players and the coach and the players, and it goes back and forth, and it's just the noise that you don't need to hear. Yeah. And I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be able to make it. I think the distance is too far to make up in too few games. And it's a shame because I was like, wow, this team is really going in the right direction. This time last year, it was like,
it's crazy to think about it. I mean, they had one of the best lines in the league. Granted, they lost 2/3 of it, but it's wild to think of how elite this team was last year to where they are now. And, I felt bad for Markstrom at the start of the year. You listened to him post-game and stuff. Like, it has been a crisis of confidence, I think, for him. I still believe that he can be a top goalie in this league. I think the offseason is going to do wonders for Jacob Markstrom. Just reset, focus on the smaller parts of my game, get away from the season and do that. I felt really bad for Markstrom because I think maybe that playoff series last year, you were a goalie. Like, games like that, they can infiltrate your psyche, right?
Yeah, no question. And what's interesting, and this is where a lot of times, a lot of the scouts are predisposed to saying, we want big goalies, That's the trend. You're looking at big goalies. Whereas for me, Ed Belfour wasn't huge. He's Ed Belfour.
Eddie.
Okay? Like, I can go down the line.
Get out your brown leather jacket, buddy.
That's right. And you played with him, and I played against him.
Can I just say, every ceremony, though, always, the brown leather jacket. Totally.
Always. 100%.
Always.
Totally.
Which I respect.
Me too. But, he's a legendary goalie. And I look at Henrik Lundqvist, Hank isn't, Jonathan Quick is not so my point that I'm saying is, the thought is the bigger the goalie, the more net they cover, etc. But the challenge is when you're not on your game and you're a big goalie, as has been the case for Markstrom for a good part of the year, the crisis of confidence that you used, it's almost more confusing because you see how big and imposing they are in the net. You see the stature. You know the skill set. You know the ability and all the intangibles that they have. And pucks just seem to find a way through them when they're struggling. That's been the case for him for the majority, not all, but the majority of the season.
Yeah, and you're right. I'm just thinking, yeah, you shoot at the middle of the net and it seems to go in. How does that happen? I really think, though, that Calgary in the future next year, I mean, changes are going to be made in Calgary. You've got to make some changes. I think this team will be fine. Yep. I think Jonathan Huberdeau was devastated by the trade after such a great year.
Absolutely.
I think it takes a little while. I kind of fall back on Thomas Vanek when he signed his big deal in Buffalo. He signed like a $10 million deal way before guys were even making half of that.
Yeah, before it was a thing.
And he was terrible his first year. And he admittedly said, that the pressure of the contract got to me. He was Thomas Vanek after that.
Right.
But that 1 year, the transition of I'm the star now, this is going to be difficult. And I really think same with Kadri, these guys are going to get a full year under their belt.
Yeah.
They're going to be very determined coming back. There's a lot of pride in those players.
No question.
I think Calgary will be right back in the mix next season. We'll be talking about Calgary, pushing Edmonton, pushing everybody else, pushing Vegas, pushing Seattle again, pushing Los Angeles. So it's unfortunate that it's all, maybe it's better to have a bad year, reset, start again next year.
Listen,
but
not everyone can. It's not as easy to join a new team as Matthew Tkachuk makes it seem.
Exactly.
Right? Like it is very difficult. There's a lot that goes into it.
That is very well said.
So we got Calgary, right? They lose last night. The gap widens, and our faith is pretty fairly shaken in the Calgary Flames' ability to make the postseason at this point. But how about the Nashville Predators, right? They go out, they beat the Seattle Kraken. They're still 5 points back of the Winnipeg Jets for that final spot. But again, they have those 3 games in hand. And I know there's a lot of talk about the difficulty of the Preds' schedule. But I don't care about that. Yes, throw it away.
These are brute.
I don't care.
Go ahead.
What do you make of the Predators? Because, and we're going to show the board in a second after we stop looking at the highlights from last night. A big win for them against a good Kraken team. Here's their schedule, right? So they got some toughies, right? I mean, you got the Kraken again, the Maple Leafs, the Bruins, the Penguins who are fighting for their lives, and you got the Blues, but the Stars are really good. The Golden Knights have been the best team in the league since the All-Star break. The Hurricanes are no joke. The Jets trying to hang on to the playoff spot. That could be a very interesting game by the time that we get there. But if you look at the last couple of weeks, maybe since the deadline, the one team that has performed the best has been the Nashville Predators. So for me, I'm not counting this team out just yet.
Reader, take it away. I'll come in there later. Get involved, Reader.
Hey,
come on.
I'm still chuckling over the pillow toss.
I know. I hope we have that on film somewhere.
All right. The schedule to me is too daunting. This is this team is being led by a bunch of young players. When you look at the guys who are leading, Evangelista, Tomasino.
Sherwood's played well too.
Thomas Novak has been rolling. Like these guys have come in. They're doing what they've done, and not expected the National Hockey League, what they've done in the American League, and they're playing extremely well. They're carrying this team. Goaltending, you talk about not tall goaltenders.
Yeah, he's been
it's crazy how good this guy is. And I just look at their schedule thinking, okay, you're playing division leaders. Mm-hmm. You're playing playoff teams that are on rolls, that are going to look and say, we're winning this game. We've got playoffs coming up, knowing they're already in. Like Carolina's in, Boston's in, Dallas is in, Toronto's in. Go down the list of teams. Like they've got the toughest schedule going. And it's one thing to say you got 4 games against top teams. You've got, 12 or 13?
You have 12 remaining.
12, and they got 10 of those 12 against top teams. That's a tough task for a bunch of young players. Maybe they're going to go in and, I'm going to say young and stupid.
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter. We're just going to go in, and the next thing you know, hey, I'd love to see the push. I'd love to see the push. I just think the schedule is just too daunting.
Mm. Well, I look at it, and of those 12 games, I see 3 of them that should be. Now, if you have designs on getting in, there's 3 of them that you ultimately have to win.
Okay.
Right? So it's the rematch against Seattle.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
It's St. Louis Blues who are playing better.
And by the way, the Kraken aren't that far ahead of the Jets.
Correct. And it's the Flames. So let's give those 9 games, right? Let's say those 9 of the remaining 12. That's if they get all those points, that's 6 points. But to readers' question, what are they going to do in the other? What are they going to do in those 9 games? Outside of 3, what are they going to do in the other 9? Can they go 6-3 in those? I don't know. Do they go 7-2? I don't think so.
Listen, you may say I'm a dreamer.
It's deep. You're not the only one.
Okay?
Hey, it's Music City there, so keep singing.
The other thing is to do that, even to get those points, you win the games in hand. Even to do that, the Seattle and Winnipeg
have to fall.
Yeah. Now I know we have a turtle race going on, right? But it's still they're still in the race. So, and it's like, Nashville could go great. They could win 8 of those games. Yeah. Wow, that would be tremendous. But if Winnipeg and Seattle win 8 of their remaining games,
then what? Exactly.
Of course,
Nashville's out. That's the tough part. You've got to probably play better than what's expected, and you've got to have some of the teams around you play poorly. Yeah. And I just don't see the combination, unfortunately.
I do. Listen, I do agree. I do think Winnipeg is going to be in when it's all said and done. Yeah. But they have shown glimpses over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. That they have dropped the ball. Like, let's call it what it is. I mean, going into the game yesterday, the Winnipeg Jets had the Ducks, right? And I went into that game being like, listen, Winnipeg, you got to do the damn thing tonight. Because if you don't, I'm not going to know what to think anymore. Sure. Because there's been moments, right, where they've lost games they should have won. And now they've had injuries, and they've had, I mean, Connor Hellebuck has started like 1,000 games this year. So, like, that's another issue. But I do think that the Predators have been really impressive when you consider everything that they're dealing with. I mean, they've had injuries as well. No excuses. They traded away Tanner Jeannot. They traded away Matthias Ekholm. And they're still finding a way to compete. And maybe it is that they have the least amount of pressure out of all of these teams based on the way they approach the deadline. They know, like, listen, front office thought we were making the postseason. They wouldn't have done the things that they did. And maybe there's a looseness that comes with that.
Yeah, plus, you're right. Absolutely. There's a little looseness that comes with that. And the fact that they have UC Saros, who keeps them in games, but who can also steal games. That's huge, because when you infuse these young players into the lineup, they don't have to play nervous for fear of making a mistake when they know they have somebody like UC Saros back there that makes the majority of the saves he should, and even some of them that you don't expect him to make.
I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, I'd have to say you probably got 27 other teams in the league that like to have UC Saros. Right. There's a few teams that are like, no, we're quite happy with our number 1. We think he's better. But other than that, UC Saros is a top-notch goaltender in the league.
No question.
And he's proven it night after night. It's a big task to play every game.
I'll tell you what.
To me, you've got a bunch of young guys who are just going to go out and play the game. And that's what's going to give this team hope for the rest of the remainder of the season, because it's a team that you're waiting for it. Now all of a sudden they make all these trades, and it's like, now you've got this playoff push. Right. Yeah. What's going on? Like, I'd love to see them push. I'd love to see them get in. It'd be a great story. Yeah. I look at their schedule going, wow.
I will say too, from a big picture standpoint, I think Winnipeg needs it the most. Like, they need to get in. I don't know what happens in Winnipeg with their roster and everything else if they don't make it. So we will see. The turtle race continues.